You're listening to a Times Higher Education podcast.
The other thing that we see are just gathering spaces where students might all be together, but they might all be in separate classes at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so they've got their social interactions. And I think that might facilitate sort of cross-pollination of ideas, that this person's taking a mechanics class and this one's doing some sort of biology thing. And suddenly, man, you've got biomechanics just in their side conversations.
We've hit a sweet spot where not only are students feeling their admissions into ASU is a thoughtful mix of high tech and high touch, but the journey through ASU is likewise providing students an opportunity to feel like they belong, and to faculty and the faculty communities of practice that are here, feeling like there's lots of opportunity for collaboration, even though we are spread here around 5 different campuses, and we have presence in over 40 countries, and we have campuses also in both Southern California and in Washington, D.C.
Hello and welcome to this week's Campus podcast. I'm Miranda Prynne, editor of Campus, which is Times Higher Education's platform where academics and university staff can share their expertise in the form of practical advice for their peers. And I am joined by
Eliza Compton, and I'm the deputy editor of Campus.
So we're continuing with a digital theme this week, talking about things that even a few years ago would have seemed the stuff of sci-fi. We're covering intelligent campuses and learning via AI avatars in immersive VR environments. Now, Eliza, this podcast really came out of your visit to Times Higher Education's Digital University's US event in St. Louis. What were some of the things that really stood out for you at that event?
Yeah, so I went to Washington University in St. Louis in May for 2 days of sessions and workshops talking about the digital transformation. And during the event, the theme that really came through for me, and I think is reflected in our interviews today, is how technology is really blurring this idea of the traditional university campus, and also the need for expertise in these areas, whether it's artificial intelligence or virtual reality, to be shared widely so that faculty, staff and students can really take advantage of the transformations that are really going on all around us at the moment. And also that innovation should come out of purpose and not actually be used just for its own sake. And between sessions, it was a busy event, I was able to sit down with Steve Harmon, who's our first interviewee today. Steve is Executive Director of the Centre of 21st Universities. He's the Associate Dean of Research in Professional Education and also a Professor in the School of Industrial Design at Georgia Tech. Our conversation took place immediately after his session on the Intelligent Campus, and that is indeed where our conversation began. Hi, Steve, and welcome to the THE podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, it's really good to run into you at Digital Universities US, and you've just come out of a session talking about the Intelligent Campus. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, what is an intelligent campus?
Well, it's a evolving concept, isn't it? It's something that I think we'll see gain rapid pace like everything does. But to my way of thinking, it's where the campus knows who you are. It knows kind of what you know. Mm-hmm. It knows who you interact with, who you might want to interact with. So we live in this ubiquitous cloud of technology. I just bought an electric car, and my car knows when I get close to it. And when I get close to it, it adjusts the seat the way I like it, and it turns the cabin temperature the way I want it. And our campuses can do the same sort of thing. So I think we'll see more and more that an intelligent campus really makes technology invisible, but facilitates our interaction and our learning.
So when we talk about the intelligent campus, how much of this is cloud, web-based, and how much of it is to do with hardware and sort of changing the look of the campus?
Most of it I think is cloud type of technologies. The look of the campus, there are parts to it that I think are important. But those parts, to my mind, really, again, involve making the technology invisible and facilitating human interaction. And so one example is, I think we'll see spaces built, we are doing it already at Georgia Tech, where students can do AR, VR, XR type of technologies, where before there were desks in the way and you didn't want to run into each other. The other thing that we see are just gathering spaces where students might all be together, but they might all be in separate classes at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so they've got their social interactions. And I think that might facilitate sort of cross-pollination of ideas, that this person's taking a mechanics class and this one's doing some sort of biology thing. And suddenly, man, you've got biomechanics just in their side conversations.
Oh, that's interesting. That seems to feed into an idea about that I've heard discussed in architecture, which is if you're designing corporate spaces, what you want to do is facilitate people running into each other and having that cross-pollination. That reminds me of that.
I think that's what the Apple headquarters was a key part of that design. And if I remember correctly, they only put one bathroom in this giant headquarters, so everybody would have to meet at the bathroom. And then they realized that didn't work. So.
Talking about campuses, how much is the physical campus important to the university's sense of itself, especially now where universities have increasing number of remote students, for example, so students who may interact with campus much less frequently than they used to?
So that's a great point, and I think there are different roles for that, as there are different learners. So if you focus on the traditional undergraduate learner, 18 to 24-year-old, whatever they are, I think they need that sense of coming together in a physical location. But the universities are so much bigger than that. We at Georgia Tech are just had our Senate vote to create a college of lifetime learning, because we realize that there are so much learning that needs to occur after your traditional time. Well, those learners are spread out. They're working, they've got lives, they're not going to come back. But we want to be able to reach out to them. They do have a need for physical gathering. So one of the projects that we're working on, we call it the Georgia Tech Atrium, is a light footprint physical space that's distributed where our learners are. We've got learners in our online programs who are all over the world, and we realize they get together whenever they can. Whenever we send a faculty member out, they physically congregate. We thought, why can't we make a space for those learners to come together instead of going to Starbucks to do their online class? They come to our space to do that. We're not doing a whole campus for this, but really it's a gathering space and a place to facilitate what's missing from a lot of online education, which is the social interaction and the networking.
So is that a bit like a co-working space?
I call it a co-learning space.
Okay, that
Yes.
makes sense. And how much? I think this question's probably related, which is how much does technology disrupt the stereotypical idea of a university as a collection of lecture halls and administrative buildings? I think you've partially answered this question, but perhaps you could talk specifically about Georgia Tech, about how it's changing the sense of the university.
I can give you
as
two.
an entity.
Sure, yeah, I can give you two examples from our experience. One is during the pandemic, our students, we went to emergency remote teaching. And as we came out of that, we had a real blend of some classes were in person, some were online, some were hybrid, and you could do either one. What we found was students might be in an in-person class only, and then have a hybrid class next. But they wouldn't go to that. They would walk to someplace on campus and do the hybrid classroom online whenever they had the opportunity.
Okay.
So we started creating these spaces for students to do that. Again, sort of a co-learning space. But prior to that, we had not really allowed our on-campus learners to do the online courses. Now we see a much greater blend of that, and so why not facilitate that in our master plan? The other thing where you really see this, though, is libraries. So if you all across, we have two large buildings that are our library. There are almost no books in them. In fact, the only books we have in there is the science fiction reading collection. All the other books are stored at another place, and students either access them online or the robots will get the book. And I don't know if it's robots, but they'll deliver the book to you where you want. But that's been the most visible change, is what's happened to libraries, I think.
Yes, I think I have heard that actually, that library spaces have really been going through a revolution through all the digital
transformations that
for me
undergoing.
the negative of that is you lose the serendipity a little bit. So I loved walking through the giant library stacks and looking for a book, and then but here's an interesting book there, and so that's harder to come by somewhat, but we'll find a way to make that up.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads me neatly onto the next question, which is how are these changes making university a better experience for students and for everybody, really, so faculty as well as other staff at the university?
I think one of the things that I see, it's really breaking down the ivory towers, breaking down the walls that surround universities, and really making universities more a part of the community in the globe. So Georgia Tech is located in the heart of Atlanta, Midtown Atlanta. And so we're surrounded by innovative large companies and communities, and our students now are becoming increasingly a part of that. So they realize that I'm not just isolated somewhere learning something abstract. I'm learning something that's really a part of things that affect me now, things that affect the globe now. The UN Sustainable Development Goals are something that is an example of that. We try to make ourselves, one of our goals is to be what's called an anchor institution. And that is an institution that really serves as an anchor to a community. And it goes beyond just our students, but also allows our students to work with those communities around us, including the business communities and the non-governmental communities and just the folks living there for that.
So that's sounding to me a bit more like a porous boundary between the university and its surroundings.
It is. I think that's the idea. Yeah, and it's maybe there are drawbacks to it, but I think on the whole it's very positive.
And you mentioned the libraries missing perhaps the experience of being there amongst all the books. Is there anything else that you think might be lost in this transition to a different way of working across the university?
Yeah, I mean the one thing that I wonder about is sort of safety, and not necessarily physical safety, but more sort of a mental safety for students to explore who they are, particularly the traditional undergrads. So in that age period, a lot of what happens at a university is a sort of maturation process of finding yourself for that. Now, if you're not ever in a safe space, what's seen as a safe space, that may be more difficult to do. But that's just me speculating. I'm not a social scientist or a sociologist, or a psychologist. So just wonder about that. But I think it's possible still, though.
And does that translate then to concerns as well about data storage and collection and
so,
issues around that?
Yeah, very much so. So we collect, as you know, lots and lots of data.
As do all universities.
Yeah, and what I've come to think about, and I don't remember where I heard this, but data is a toxic resource.
Right.
So just like medicine, is good in amounts, but if you're in contact with that medicine too long, or you have too much of it, it can have a toxic effect on you. And so I think the same way with our data. The longer we hold on to data, the more the possibilities come. There could be a data breach, or you could identify who are people in what should be anonymous data. So we have to be very careful about that and think about not just the way we treat data now, but the way the data could be treated in the future. And think data we may think is safe at this point may not be so safe as we get into quantum computing and other advanced technologies.
I wanted to pivot the conversation just slightly to talk about you and your background a bit. I read, probably on your university profile, that you taught English in Egypt for a while after graduation, and I just wanted to ask you about that. I'm always interested in experiences of education across countries, because times higher education does so much of this kind of work.
Well, it's probably not the answer you want, but I was an English literature major as an undergraduate, and I couldn't get a job when I graduated. I didn't really know what sort of job I wanted. And I was actually working in a mailroom of a company. And I was English literature, by the way, because I like everything. And I managed to dodge the system until spring term of my junior year when they forced me to declare a major. And so I thought, well, I can still finish on time with English. So I was working in the mailroom, and a friend of mine who really wanted to do international work had an opportunity to teach in Upper Egypt. But the place was too dangerous, and they wouldn't let him go by himself. So he had to find somebody to go with. So he said, "Hey, would you like to go teach English in Egypt?" I said, "You bet." And so I did. I was there for 2 years, and they had billed me as a master teacher because I had a degree in literature. I quickly learned that I knew almost nothing about teaching, in fact, so I had to learn rapidly. I'll just tell you the story. I know our time is short, but I traveled while I was there down through the Rift Valley in Africa. And I was in Kenya, and I saw a video disc. And you may not remember these, but they were the big, looked like a CD.
Yeah,
but,
I
right?
do remember.
Yeah, so that was the first addressable video where you could skip. You didn't have to rewind or fast forward. And I saw this video disc about how to repair diesel locomotive trains. And you didn't have to know how to read to learn how to repair. You didn't have to know a language to know how to repair it. And I thought, that is really neat. I want to do that. And so I went to figure out who made those sorts of things. And that's where I discovered educational technology, and it's sort of been there ever since.
Oh, how interesting. I feel like this experience has also given you empathy with students coming into a very changeable world, and to have an idea about how then to use the transferable skills that are so valuable.
It's at the core of undergraduate higher education, learning how to learn. And that to me is increasingly important, because things change so fast. We have such technological churn going on that we've always got to be learning.
No, absolutely. And speaking of learning, for a final question, because we both have other sessions to be getting to at the event, you wrote an article for Campus a couple of years ago about your extracurricular activities as a very curious person in the world. So about learning mandolin, about your woodwork, and I just wanted to ask you about those, what that kind of learning does to enhance your professional career, or your sense of yourself as an educator. How does it fit into your career?
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's because I used to ask my students, what were your hobbies? And they would give hobbies, and I would list my hobbies, such as the ones you mentioned. But I realized my real hobby is learning. Right. I love to learn. And there are different modalities in different disciplines or traditions of how people learn things. And I think I've been able, to some small degree at least, to figure out, here's how they teach woodworking in a certain way of it. Here's how you teach varieties of music. Here's how you might teach a language. And I think you can pull from that and blend those things together in new ways of teaching and learning that go on. So for me, I'm always looking to learn something, and unfortunately, I'm not too picky what it is. It's just the slightest thing that catches my interest, I'll chase it down and learn about it. But at the core, it's that learning, and I just love learning.
What is your latest hobby?
Small engine repair.
Oh. Is that connected back to the Egyptian video disc?
No, it's pressure washing my deck. The pressure washer broke, and so I decided I could take the pressure washer and get it fixed, or I can finally buckle down and figure out how to take apart an engine and put it back together. So I would say I'm 60% successful so far.
Right. Well, this is one thing that digital transformation has really taught us, is that learning is incremental, and you sort of try, experiment and fail and keep experimenting.
Exactly.
And in a strange kind of way, it seems to have turned the whole world into a campus. Like you mentioned YouTube. It's a small leap, I think, from teaching yourself something at home in YouTube and translating that to teaching more complex, very much concepts online through university courses. So
here's a more academic example. When I was doing my doctoral work, I had all kinds of statistics classes, but we didn't really do Bayesian statistics. And I've known about it, I've kind of read about it, but I've never really studied it. Well, there's so many great resources on YouTube that teach you Bayesian statistics, and I feel like now I've got a good feel for how that works, which was based on just my own informal learning. So that's the word, I think, is informal learning is so powerful now than it didn't used to be.
And then there's that skill of learning how to learn, which is so much of what university teaches us, I think. This seems like a good place to finish. Steve, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great.
Well, my pleasure. It was great talking with you.
Steve has a very admirable approach to learning. small engine repair. Given the state of my car, I could really do with knowing a bit more about that myself. It's always great to hear from institutions which are embracing change, such as Steve points out, this need for more informal co-learning spaces, not just on campus, but wherever students are likely to gather. I like the fact that it does seem like there's an awareness, even among real technophiles, now that students do still want this human interaction and do still benefit from that alongside their digital learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love the conversation. Steve's a terrific, is a font of knowledge, and as I think really comes across, a real passionate learner himself. So I think this gives him a great deal of empathy for what you need to learn, and also the different ways, the different forums in which we're all learning these days. I really like this idea of the campus who knows where you are. And as you say, Miranda, coupled with spaces that are adapted to different types of learning. It's such a different way of thinking about the university campus from, say, when I was at university.
Yeah, quite. And turning to another trailblazing institution, I actually spoke to Lev Gonek, who is the Chief Information Officer at Arizona State University. Now, he also spoke at Digital Universities US. I actually caught up with Lev more recently to find out a bit more about his work at ASU. I should mention, alongside his role as Chief Information Officer, he also chairs the Sun Corridor Network, which is Arizona's research and education network, and he was recognized in 2023 by the Orbi Awards as Arizona's top large enterprise CIO. I could go on, his CV is extensive, but let's just say in the digital space, he really knows his stuff. And I was really keen to find out from him how on earth one drives a joined up digital strategy at an organisation as huge and arguably fragmented as ASU. Hi, Lev. Thanks so much for joining us on the Campus podcast to share your wealth of digital knowledge. Now, I believe you arrived at ASU in 2017. How have institutional digital priorities and ambitions changed over the last 7 years?
I think here at ASU, there's always been an aspiration to make sure that everything that we're doing in the digital realm is at the leading edge. When I arrived 7 years ago, the focus really was on growing capacity to support, at the time, what we thought was an important but not yet mature online marketplace for students interested in either coming back to school or time shifting, job-related activities. And so a lot of focus was focused in on digital capacity building to support online. At ASU 12 years ago, there were 400 students in our online program. Today, Ed Plus, which is the ASU organization that orchestrates all of our online work and a whole lot more, will actually pass through 90,000 online learners. So certainly, 7 years ago, our goal in the enterprise technology area was to support that work. I think what has happened sort of right in the middle of all of this past 7 years was COVID. And as a result, I think the trajectory of the work that we're doing has shifted significantly. And in particular, as it relates to my work, very much focus in on not just supporting the campus so that, in fact, we might be resilient through the pandemic, but actually leveraging the moment and indeed a global crisis to actually try to advance, an effort of being coming out even stronger than we went in. And as a result, we've, through the pandemic, focused in on really creative and disruptive technologies like our virtual reality initiative for our STEM education with Dreamscape, a project we'd be happy to chat more about, or more recently, the work that we've been doing around AI. All of that is essentially, coming out of the commitment of not just surviving and being resilient through the pandemic, but really taking the moment to accelerate the work that we're doing to advance the mission of ASU.
Yeah, I mean, that growth is almost inconceivable. It's so huge. We're all agreed digital tech does offer endless possibilities and potential very exciting applications, but there are also some dangers to it, and it needs to be sort of handled with care. I mean, given that any university has finite time and resources, where do you think energies should be focused right now in the mission to advance higher education services using digital tools?
Well, certainly here in the United States, there is no single market called higher education. It's a highly segmented marketplace. And in fact, to be responsive to the question, it really depends on where one sits in that marketplace. And there are different dynamics underfoot. I'll simply share that, while there has been a secular decline in enrollment across the higher education scene here in the United States, going back now almost 10 years, and certainly, we're witnessing this in some of the headlines with schools consolidating and some actually shutting down. We here at ASU, and we're part of a subset of the marketplace, are actually in a position to scale the work and that we do, and actually make our educational offerings available to more and different kinds of students and learners at this very moment. And so, here at ASU, our students are coming back for this fall semester, and we will yet again be growing. As I mentioned, our online community of learners will pass through 90,000. That's more than a 10% increase over last year. And our campus experience will also be growing. We'll be passing very close to 90,000 there. So, 180,000 students. Now, why is that relevant? Well, it's relevant because it depends on, what support the technology community provides. And in the main, the way I've always thought about this is, how can the technology education community be part of a breakout strategy? And the question is, what are you trying to break out of? And that varies significantly. In our case, it's really trying to be part of a breakout strategy to support the next innovation curve, while making sure that all of our digital infrastructure is as robust as it possibly can be to support scaling. And here at ASU, that as a result leads to different kinds of investments. Some of it is in digital architecture to support scaling. In addition to those 180,000 students, we have well over, I think it's now north of 500,000 folks taking credits from ASU through some of our certification programs and short program offerings that are there. All of the learners, and in the end, there are millions of people around the world who are touching the ASU learning ecosystem. All of them need to have digital identities. And so, again, we need to be able to support digital identities no matter where students are around the world. And likewise, that requires us to have digital infrastructure that will, again, scale and be robust 24/7, 365. And, that has led to organizational changes that correspond to obviously the commitments to supporting scale and innovation work here at ASU. And it also, as a result, has afforded us an opportunity to be leaning into important work in the area of AI at the very moment in time that a lot of other schools are sort of focused in on, how to deal with significant fiscal constraint. While we have some fiscal constraints here at ASU, as all universities do, we're actually investing more than ever before in the idea of personalized and individualized learning opportunities that are afforded coming out of this interesting and exciting, and to be sure, disruptive moments around generative AI, and making sure, again, that we provide those tools and platforms for our faculty and for our students, and at the same time, make sure that they are secure and thoughtfully developed in terms of all of the known challenges of working in the AI space right now.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned a series of big numbers there. I just wondered, since ASU is undoubtedly a pioneer in the online learning space, and you are reaching so many students through digital means, how does ASU create and maintain an institutional sense of identity and belonging among this huge and disparate student cohort?
It's a really important part. I think when we have visitors, which we do literally daily, who come from all over the world to visit ASU, they remark time and again about how intimate this huge university ecosystem feels, how personal people's experiences are. And a lot of it is informed by deep commitments to the culture of the institution, which is informed by the ASU Charter. And the ASU Charter is very much an inclusive effort that is chiseled into the bedrock of our institution, which is really on making sure that everyone who aspires to have an educational opportunity knows that they are invited here at ASU. We call that, again, an orientation that is around inclusive student access rather than essentially the more elitist orientation to exclusivity. Ours is very much focused in on that kind of work and still trying to do that in many ways, leveraging, I think, a very thoughtfully constructed and architected high-tech, high-touch approach. And so we have been pioneers in the use of personalized campaigns to reach out to students. We have literally hundreds of thousands of visitors and families coming to the university, and the interactions that they have with the university are highly customized. In addition to obviously a college tour, they also have, through the insights that they're willing to share about their own student journeys, their interests, their backgrounds, opportunities for us to fashion opportunities for engaging and getting to know the university in ways that feels very much like a more intimate, almost like honors college experience. And of course, ASU has the largest honors college in the country, but it's embedded inside an even larger ecosystem here. And so that we certainly feel that by using technology, whether that is in our constituent relationship management tools, or whether that is in the way we use our tools for interacting with students when they reach out to us through our various, what we call experience centers, our coaching infrastructure, our advisory infrastructure, all of those are using cutting edge technologies that allow students who are interested in having transactional answers attended to by interacting with the machine, but a very easy, essentially one-touch escalation to talk to a human. And we're finding that, given again the segmentation of the marketplace, we've hit a sweet spot where not only are students feeling their admissions into ASU is a thoughtful mix of high tech and high touch, but the journey through ASU is likewise providing students an opportunity to feel like they belong, and to faculty and the faculty communities of practice that are here, feeling like there's lots of opportunity for collaboration, even though we are spread here around 5 different campuses, and we have presence in over 40 countries, and we have campuses also in both Southern California and in Washington, D.C. Nevertheless, again, stitched all together through this common commitment to the charter and to our inclusion, our what we call inclusive excellence as our North Star.
Yeah, so really using these tools to facilitate interaction rather than the danger that many people would highlight in spending too much time online is isolation, and actually you're working to use them for exactly the opposite. I wonder if you can tell us about some of the most exciting projects you're currently working on at ASU.
Right. Well, I mean, I think one that I would just share with you is this absolutely fabulously creative redesign of many of our STEM educational offerings. In the US, one of the tragedies is that we've thought for probably almost forever that some students can and some students can't succeed in STEM education. And we here at ASU fundamentally do not believe that there is such a, as it were, sort of de facto way of looking at student learning potential. So we've partnered with these amazingly creative folks in Los Angeles to leverage an immersive technology, which is called Dreamscape Immersive. It's a project that was designed and developed by Walter Parks with his colleague Steven Spielberg, which was used for essentially a consumer entertainment experience. We have leveraged the technology, and we have an exclusive education license with them to leverage all of that infrastructure and storylines to create a fully immersive, experientially focused journey that allows our students in their labs for biology. We've now had over 20,000 students go through our biology sequence in Dreamscape, what we call now Dreamscape Learn, which is really a group of students working together as a team, going into an immersive experience, being represented as avatars themselves inside this highly playful, but at the same time, extremely well scripted narrative around, in the case of the biology sequence, saving a species from extinction and being highly motivated through the compelling ways in which the narrative is developed to work together as a team. And working together here means also learning about biology in 18 different modules to actually not only become competent, but to, again, work their way through the whole curriculum. Likewise in chemistry and earth and space science. Now this year we'll be working on art history. So these immersive experiences, I think, are extraordinarily exciting. And when you add to that work that we're pioneering and piloting now to make sure that in addition to the between 6 to 30 students who can be part of these immersive avatar-based experiences, students will also be able to bring in their AI avatar and personalize their own experience inside the group's work, so that whether you're a novice and you're in the same experience with somebody who is quite skilled, you as a novice can work with your AI avatar to help you be successful navigating using adaptive tools to help you work through the lab that you need to work on. And at the other end, if you are extremely ambitious, you can also work with your AI avatar to actually excel and explore frontiers that aren't necessarily part of the core curriculum that is there. So we see that as really one of the most exciting activities that we'll be sharing with the campus community this fall.
Yeah, and of course that brings a dual benefit, because not only does it sound like a really exciting way to learn, just the immersive, emotive nature of it, but also it's an opportunity for students to really up their digital skills in working with the technology itself. And it's easy to think how that can be applied across many, many disciplines, that system. A final question, which I'm sure anyone working in this space at a large university will be keen to hear. I just wondered if you had advice on what the key to success is in enacting joined up digital plans across a huge organization like ASU.
Well, again, I think the generalized insights that I oftentimes offer starts with alignment. Alignment, which starts at the in the C-suite, working with the chancellor or the president, and making sure that all of the opportunities that are possible leveraging digital technology are aligned to the actual mission of the institution, not just as a matter of what's on paper, but also actually around which there is deep commitment from the executive suite through the executive of the institution, or the provost, the team responsible for the delivery of the education materials, the deans and the like. So that alignment piece of it is certainly for the technology leaders on campus is a piece that cannot be in any way, shape, or form discounted. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of that as my number one job. I think the other piece of the challenge here is to realize that all of us technology leaders are challenged with technical debt. That is to say, the technologies that we've not been able to invest in over the years, which now are rate limiting to our abilities to support the breakout work. And that is skillful engagement with one's own team and making sure that we hit the balance right between maintaining and feeding the legacy systems, and at the same time are very intentional about the work that we're going to do to shift curves so that we're not only maintaining the legacy, but that we're starting intentionally on innovation activities, that we're not waiting only for new budget or cumulatively new budgets, but that we're taking the hard decisions on redistributing budgets and personnel to advance those works. And as a result of that, hopefully be able to be demonstrably closer aligned to the aspirations of the institution, where oftentimes I have found university technology organizations to actually find themselves significantly at a disconnect, where the institution, it has great ambitions and great aspirations for the way in which technology can support those goals, while the university's technology team feels largely handcuffed and strapped by the legacy and the lack of new investment. That's the art and science of being a technology leader.
So a constant balancing act. Well, look, Lev, this will offer lots of useful insight for anyone working in the space in other universities around the world. So thank you so much for joining us today. So there we are, folks. The key is to get buy-in from the top for your plans by ensuring that they're aligned to the broader mission of the institution. Simple, right? More seriously, it may come as some comfort that even at an institution as forward-thinking as ASU, their digital team do still have to grapple with legacy systems when they're trying to sort of roll out tech strategies, tools, and applications.
And on that note, we will wrap up this episode of the Times Higher Education podcast. Thank you very much for listening. If you would like more information, resources, advice around the digital transformation and all other areas of higher education, please visit campus at timeshighereducation.com/campus. We'll see you next time.
You're listening to a Times Higher Education podcast.